Welcome to the Intentionists podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Amy Schreiber.
And I'm Hilary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries. Welcome to our episode 67. We're going to focus today on focus and freedom, the Five of Wands and Sagittarius. And we are in the middle of a completion cycle right now because we are finishing our signs of the zodiac. This will be our final zodiac sign of the year.
Yes.
Final zodiac episode. So it's very exciting. And before we dive into our topic today, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a newsletter. So you go to our website, Intentionists with an S, INTIONISTS.com. You can sign up and keep in touch with us. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Hilary. How are you?
I am feeling really great today. And I can't say that every day, but today, I'm sure by the time we release this, this will be like a week from now. But right now we're recording on the new moon in Sagittarius. And it just feels so, I can just feel all of that like explorer energy. And anyway, just it feels like a really powerful ending to a big year. Do you feel that?
I agree. Yeah, it feels good. I feel good today. It's a vibey day. So
I woke up this morning and I was literally buzzing. Like it happened to me the last 2 days where I woke up earlier than normal. And I just woke up with like my whole body felt like it was like buzzing a little bit. And I'm like, what is going on? Did I take something that I was unaware of last night? Like what is happening? And so I'm going to chalk it up to the universe.
Yeah, for sure. That's so weird because that happened to me too yesterday and today.
Way. Are you serious?
Woke up earlier than normal, just weirdly wide awake at like 5:30. So it must be the moon.
There you go. That the dark moon to the new moon. I love new moons. I found since charting the moon cycle for me that full moons are a little harder, but the new moons are always just, I love that like rebirth energy that like, here we are, a new cycle, anything's possible, anything can
all
happen.
The possibilities there.
Yes. And it really has been so powerful to visualize my menstrual cycle as being something like that too, that like every month you have a new time to start over instead of like, here's this thing that visits me that is kind of a thing.
For sure. Yes. Way more helpful to think of it that way.
Yes. Well, shall we talk about the Five of Wands?
Let's do that. And just for a final reminder for our listeners, if you're jumping on here for the first time, at the beginning of the year, we wanted to explore all the zodiac signs and also a bit of the tarot. So we picked a card at random, 12 cards, one for each month. And so that's this series, and this is the last one of that. And the card we picked for this month is Five of Wands, which is very aligned with Sagittarius energy. And we found that our cards have so closely been related to the sign. It's been really fun to see because it was totally random at the beginning. But anyways, about this Five of Wands card, this is the card of inner conflict. This is like a lot of scattered and opposing energy where there's a lot of work, a lot of energy being put out, but it's very unfocused. It's going in all directions and it's at odds with opposing forces. So nothing's really achieved. And as a reminder, wands in tarot are the fire element. So this has to do with creation and your will. So with this card, yes, it feels very active, like there's a ton of things happening, but really things are at a standstill because nothing is moving in the same direction.
Oh my gosh, that has been like my life for the last couple of weeks where I'm just, I feel where it just feels like so many little like cylinders are starting to like pump and get moving. But I'm like, where am I going? Where am I taking this?
Yeah, I think this is a common state in this culture we live in that is so distracted, but also really like hyper focused on productivity. So it's like you're trying to like put drops in the bucket, but if you're putting it in all different buckets, then none of them get filled, right? And this is kind of like the dark side of Sagittarius energy,
Totally.
which I am very familiar with as a pretty classic textbook Sagittarian.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so this is kind of been one of the biggest challenges of my life, like
Mm,
throughout my whole life. So I'm kind of excited to talk about what I've learned as far as what helps me rein this in. And the main remedy that I have found for this is just focus. And the
mm,
other one, kind of a secondary remedy, is flexibility.
mm,
And I'm talking flexibility in terms of kind of loosening your grip on your version of what you think is best so that you can have room to accept new and differing perspectives that might be better for you, might be more helpful. So about focus, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I just wanted to share again because it's the first mystical oracle card that has ever been drawn for me. And you drew it for me, Hilary. Do you remember
my
this?
gosh. I don't know. Maybe. Tell me the story.
It was when we still lived in Modesto and we were planning our move up to Washington. And I just had
Mm,
so many things to do to get ready for this move and to pack and everything. And so I was doing yoga under my little orange tree and I was just repeating this mantra over and over in my head, just focus, focus, because I knew that's what I needed to do to like get through this day, especially with packing for me. I mean, you find like a box of old photos and then soon enough it's 10 hours later and you're just reminiscing on the floor instead of getting
yes.
it done.
Yes.
So yeah, I was like really, I was thinking about like focus, like I was trying to harness this energy. And you stopped by with your shiny new Oracle deck, and you were like, you were like, "Do you want a reading?" And I said yes. I mean, I thought it was a little bit weird because this was before we were
This
all
was a
about
long time ago.
cards. Yes.
That's right. I was going to say, this is a long time ago then.
Right. And so I'm like, sure. And you pick a card, and all that the card said was just focus on it. I was so thrilled about that. It's like,
That's
wow.
what I love about this type of work is that it really is really, it's more about getting personal validation for your own intuitive
Right.
path, because so often I think, especially coming from our background, but really anybody, we're always learning how to trust ourselves. And so when you have
Hmm.
that, on the one hand, your circumstance was very logical, like I need to focus, I got to get out of here. But then there was also that higher thing of what do I really need to do? What does my soul want me to do? And then it's always wonderful when you get those extra little nudges, it makes you
Yeah.
feel less alone in this whole, whatever this is, this like our existence.
This simulation. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. The another way that I have found to narrow focus when we are kind of doing a million things toward a million different ideas is to become really clear on our intention behind doing each thing. So, because we are the Intentionist podcast, I
Mhm.
want to talk about this for a second because if we understand like our motivation and the intention behind what we choose to put energy toward, it can really help us weed out the less important tasks. Or, we like if you're someone like me and you get an idea, you feel really excited about it and you're like this is the best thing ever, instead of like having to immediately move on it, which is what I tend to want to do, you can just write it down and stick it in your one of the thousand notebooks of ideas
Mhm. Mhm.
and put it aside until you have the capacity to do it. So yeah, I mean, we can do a lot of things at once, but to become really successful at something or really push something and bring it into existence, we got to focus. Like we got to pick one or two at a time is what I have found. This idea of having to choose what to focus on used to be so paralyzing for me. This was so paralyzing because I had the idea in my mind that if I don't immediately do all my projects and all my ideas at one time, I'm going to fail to reach my creative potential. And or someone else will steal my idea and do it. And I want to talk more about the kind of competition aspect
Oh,
of this
yes.
card.
This is a good topic.
Right.
Continue. Yes.
So yeah, so there's the idea of I'm not going to reach my potential, someone else is going to steal my idea, and so I have to do it all at once. But really, this thinking is a very high form of self-sabotage because it ensures that all of your projects will fail. You feel like if you don't think this way, it's how you prevent them from failing, but really it's what makes them fail. because you only have
Totally.
so much time and energy.
Right. And if you're always focusing on like, I mean, it's always a balance, right? Because on the one hand, having a competitive nature can be very helpful, right? Like get out
Uh-huh.
there, compete. And, you know, in some ways, you're the mentality of they're going to take my idea. There is truth to that, right? Because I do think
Right.
certain thoughts come through the zeitgeist and there's times where they're like ready to, birth into reality, and other times where and like you could be the one to do it, or it might be someone else that does it. But I think that the point is sometimes you get ideas for things and it's not really yours to have, or it's maybe not the best thing for you. And so then it leads you down a path to the next thing, which was the best thing for you. So it's that like abundance scarcity kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? How do we dismantle the scarcity?
Right. No, that's a really good point. And I think that like, that's where going back to your intention behind something. So you get an idea and you think, okay, why do I want to do this idea? Is it because I think it'll make me money? Is it because I'm afraid of something and it'll like alleviate that fear? Is it because, and so
Yes.
when you do that, then you can like have more pure intentions and pure
Mm-hmm.
motivations,
Mm-hmm.
like choose to go forward on those other than, I mean, and it's not a bad thing to say I want to do this because I need to make money. But if you know that, like having the clarity to know about that is just going to be helpful.
There's definitely something that I can think of an example that I've been working this out in my own life. I find that I tend to be fairly well intentioned. And so then these projects or ideas come up and people are like, do you want to work on this with me? Or you want to, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. And then you start to go down the path and you're like, wait a minute, what do I really want? Like, this is taking me away from my ultimate focus, which is for me at this point, it's client work and it's writing, right?
Mhm.
And it's taken me a few years to narrow it down, to like narrow what is it that I actually, how can I contribute the most and be fulfilled and enjoy what I'm doing and give back, and all of those things, right? Hitting the middle of your life, you're kind of like, okay, what am I trying to really create with my life? And it's not coming from ego. It's not driven by, I want people to see me a certain way or whatever. What is that? And
Mhm.
I've had to dismantle certain ideas or projects or step away from things because I'm like, this is coming from my FOMO. Like, is this coming from FOMO, or is this
Mhm.
coming, which is fear of missing out if we're not used
Yes.
to
Thank you
I
for
think everybody
translating.
knows what FOMO is, but in case you don't, it's the fear of missing out. Like, am I afraid that if I don't take this opportunity that I'm going to be left out, or that I'm going to miss out on an opportunity that could really help me, but it's pulling me away from what I really want to be doing? And that really is true, because if the one thing I've learned whenever I've been successful at various, endeavors, it's because I threw all the eggs into the basket when I finally got clear on the vision.
Mhm.
But there is also certain times of life where I think it's okay to kind of muck about, because we're trying, I know that that's what you and I have been doing for the last couple of years, like kind of tearing down our belief systems, figuring out, what do we really want? Who are we really? What do we stand for?
Mhm.
How do we want to contribute? How do we want to serve in the world? And it's also really interesting that as you look at this, the biggest shift that's happened for me, and I wonder if this is the case for you too, Aimee. I think I used to be so focused on, like, if I were to see something, I was a performer. So I would see something and I would be hypercritical of whatever it was that I was watching. Not always, but sometimes. And a lot of it was because I was like, it was like ego bravado of like, I could do a better job. And then I was like, why am I not getting those opportunities? Or why am I blah, 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 whatever it is. And what I've noticed is, as I've dismantled this constant need to compete, and I've kind of let that be what it is, and just saying, like, there's really more than enough to go around in all these different
Mhm.
areas, that you get so incredibly, like, now I find I'm so incredibly inspired by basically any art form, like anything I go see. Of course I have a critical eye, because I've seen, I've been trained in various things, but I find that I'm always overwhelmed by the effort of the performers. And I think of the years of training and the years of cultivating. And I always think of how lucky I am that I get to be there to like witness other people's greatness. And I
Mhm.
feel that way about art too, just to think, this took someone a long time. And what I'm witnessing, like maybe the finished product isn't like genius work, but it's a step along their journey. It was their bravery of being willing to actually create something from themselves and put it out there. And I think that as artists, whether you're a writer or a painter or an actor or whatever kind of, you can be an artist in all forms. You're in sales, let's say, that the sheer process of doing the action and maintaining the focus is really that can really shift and change people's experiences of their life. So
I'm glad you brought that up. And that's such a great shift in mindset that allows you to actually enjoy other people and to be inspired by them without feeling threatened. And that's just back to the whole abundance versus scarcity.
I think it's also that goes back to wounded feminine. Because I think when you get underneath everything else, it's like as women, I've read a lot of different things about how we were socialized to kind of be pitted against each other in weird ways where like, you're competing for the male heir. We've been disempowered. And so there's an element of being pitted against each other. And I keep finding that through this process of recognizing when I slip into competition mode, if I'm like, oh, she had success, so that means I can't be successful. If I can catch it, and I still have my moments. It's not like, oh, I've figured it all out, I'm now a Zen master, like come and join my ashram. I'm not saying that, but I'm noticing, I'm able to witness it more within myself, and I find that the real blessing that comes from that is I find I get to witness other people's greatness, and I'm inspired by it rather than threatened.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a freedom compared to the previous mindset. And it allows you to actually like form relationships with people and connect with them, which is a huge part of, I think, society's problems, like the whole isolation and we're against each other instead of in cooperation. And we need each other. Like that's the bottom line. We need each other. We like human beings die without connection with others.
Right.
So that's the other piece of that. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the exploration part and how weeding these things out, like it's not like the exploration and like trying different things, that is a necessity. I think that is a very important piece to this puzzle. And it took all of that for you to now get to the point where you are now, where you are clear about like, no, this is what I like. And you know that because you've like tried these other things. You've like explored these projects that people come to you with and they sound exciting. And you explore them for a bit and then you realize like, no, that's not what I want to do. So with all of this focus, like, I mean, unless you're Oprah and you're like, no, I know, I know exactly what I want to convey and who I want to talk to. Like you reach that level of your career and life understanding of yourself. It's okay to explore, and it's good and necessary.
Right. And even I think, I mean, I would imagine that even our Queen Oprah has to, I would imagine that she still has those moments where she's exploring and failing. And I mean, obviously not in the monetary ways because she's
Right.
figured out that for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that really is that exploration factor is it. I think staying in the open, in the wonderment is what helps to keep the inspiration flowing.
Right. I agree. And yeah, that's very Sagittarius. Like that's very exploring and the freedom of that and like the expansion. Before we expand into Sagittarius, I just wanted to share this quote I found this about focus. I really liked this woman, Winifred Gallagher. She wrote a book called Rapt Attention and the Focused Life, which I haven't read the book, but I would like to now. But she said that living the focused life is not about trying to feel happy all the time. Rather, it's about treating your mind as you would a private garden and being as careful as possible about what you introduce and allow to grow there. And I think that's just such a great way to visualize everything that you bring into your life, you know, from the even from the feelings of like the attitude of competition versus collaboration, like that's a little seed that you're allowing in your mind or you're not.
Mhm.
And she goes on to say that your ability to focus on certain things and suppress other things in your mind, this is the key to controlling your experience and ultimately your well-being.
Okay, this makes me think of this concept of dogma versus discipline. Like there's an element of
Mm.
this, and this is a line that I've been kind of batting around in my mind about there is an element of like this, like she's talking about with focus, being focused and your ability to focus being part of, of a necessary discipline. And I think there is a discipline that comes with happiness, like to be happy. There's a discipline of putting certain practices in place, of practicing gratitude. I mean, we know there's been studies done about this stuff, right? And
Mhm.
especially when you have like a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice or a fitness practice or whatever that is, spiritual practice. And how quick and easy it is to slide into dogma of like, if I don't do it, then I'm going to be unhappy. So it's like holding
Right.
it loosely enough, like being disciplined and then recognizing that we're also, and I know I've said this before, that we're also like the moon where we change every couple of days. And sometimes, doing the daily practice is really, really important. And sometimes it's okay to miss one day if you have to, if you're traveling or if
Right.
you're doing something and that, people really love to hold to the dogma of it, of like, and the dogma gives them the ability to be right about everything, or, it helps to wield judgment, which isn't ever helpful. And especially in this type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great little summary of the whole focused yet flexible
Mm-hmm.
point of this entire card and discussion so far.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome. So let's talk about what we're up to really quick, because we don't really, I mean, we do talk about it sometimes, but we don't typically promote much of what we do. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of our quick wins, or I guess I would say our long awaited victories in our lives.
Yeah. For super slow culminations.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really it. I know. Okay. And the reason I want to share this is because I know for our listeners that, we're all in this process, right? We're all in process in our lives, whether we're in different careers or whatever. But I know a lot of people, especially the ones that connect with us on Instagram, are entrepreneurs. And sometimes
Mhm.
they're like independent consultants or whatever it is, and they're building their own business, or even maybe they're building a product-based business or whatever they're transitioning into. And I think it's really, I know for me, I get triggered by all the crap that's on the internet about like my overnight success and how 5 ways to this or 5 ways to that. And I think it's kind
Yeah.
of, on the one hand, like it's great to have actionable line items. And on the other hand, it's like, shut the heck up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's perpetuating like a misleading view of success, I think.
Right. And that,
But can be helpful
yeah.
in like for a day, like as a tiny stepping stone on your road to success. But yeah.
Yes. And that being said, I wanted to celebrate some of the things that you and I have been talking about doing for years and that are actually now happening. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit about your art/tattoo studio that you and Danny are opening, because it's getting close, right?
It is. Yeah. So, okay. So, Danny, my husband, we opened up this tattoo shop in 2015 when we moved up here
In Olympia, Washington, for
in
people.
Olympia,
Yes.
Washington. Yes. Yes. Thank you. And so, yes, he's been doing that. He's been tattooing out of there, and it's been a really small space. I don't remember the square footage, but anyway, we just decided to make the move to expand into an 1,800 square foot space that has half of it is going to be like room for several tattoo artists. I think we have like 5, maybe 6 now. And then the other side is going to be an art gallery where my husband and I both paint. And so we want to have our artwork and then other local artists' artwork. We're planning actually the grand opening first show, which is going to be focused on the forest, the Pacific Northwest landscape. So it's called the Deep Forest Exhibit. And so I'm really excited about that. And so I'm going to be more involved with that now moving forward on the gallery side.
And I'm going to ask that you do some stories from your new space and show all of our Intentionist listeners your new
I
space,
will. Yeah.
because it's very exciting.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah. The tattoo side is completely finished as far as floors and painting, and we just have a couple more weeks left, I think, on the gallery side as far as construction. So yeah, I'm really excited, and we're gonna do we're gonna be able to do like events and things out of there too, as far as art classes, and hoping to get together some intentionist workshop
Yes.
uh, type events. So yeah, it's very very exciting, and it's been yeah a culmination of a lot of things, a lot of behind the scenes work. My husband and I have both been working really hard for years to just even learn art and create an art practice and discipline to the point where we feel comfortable to be like, I have a painting and I'm going to sell it in a gallery, right?
Yes.
So there's just a lot of energy behind it, and we're both very excited.
It's
So
so great. I'm so
that's
happy for
that.
you. And that's such a big deal. Like I just think it's wonderful. So congratulations.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I wanted to,
Tell us about your thing,
okay,
Hilary.
I will, if you have to twist my arm. Um, so I know I've mentioned on the podcast multiple times in the past about my shamanic training. And I mean, we obviously talk a lot about the intuitive arts um, and sometimes we discuss business or whatever, but I do sound healings in town, and they're becoming quite popular, and the events are starting to sell out, and I'm getting to where I have people asking for private sessions. And this whole time I've been like, okay, I'm trying to figure out to make the jump of, do I get my own space? Do I rent space from other people? It's sound. And so sound is loud. Like I can't just be in a regular spa. And so finally, we have this space in the back of we have like an extended garage. And I've always wanted to turn it into like a yoga dance studio. And I just finally like got a wild hair a week ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're just going to do this. And my dad's coming into town and he's going to help me lay the flooring. And we're going to call it the garage room, I think. I haven't decided if it'll be the garage room. So I know when I made that joke earlier about come join my ashram, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm not trying to start a cult. I just want a little spot in the back. Anyway, haven't decided if it's going to be the garage room or the shaman shack, but maybe we'll do a little poll and see what.
Yes.
But I'm going to be, I'm available for sessions now. I only have a few left for this calendar year, but in the fall, I'm going to be opening up a lot of offerings. And so I'm really excited about that. Lately, I've been working with a lot of people who are getting started on their business path and kind of stepping into a new way of working, a new identity. In fact, that's almost every topic that we've discussed with the last several clients that I've worked with. So I'm finding that given my skill set and my experience, that tends to be a really big, powerful point of what I can offer, and the space that I can hold for people in terms of both healing energetically, but also getting focused so that people can create what they want. So if you're interested in hearing more about that sort of thing, please reach out to me on Instagram at Hilary Zwallen or even at Intentionists. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yes, amazing.
So shall we talk Sag?
Let's do it.
Okay, so just like we've been talking about, Sagittarius is all about, it's like I expand is kind of the mantra around Sagittarius. So it is the last fire sign. It is considered the sage or the wise one. It's ruled by the planet Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and abundance. Some of the key words that are associated with Sagittarius are philosopher, meaning, wisdom, faith, trust, truth, intuition, and nomad. And the shadow side, which they all these signs have, are silver-tongued devil, guru, charmer, teacher, restless, zealot, salesy. So, there's always the light and the dark to every sign. But Sagittarius at its ultimate core is the explorer. It's the wise man or woman, but it's also kind of the fool that rushes right in. And it kind of teaches us that when we truly embrace life with all of the experiences that life has to offer, with the good and with the bad, that we don't become more cautious. We actually become more of the ardent explorer, and we want to cast our net even wider, because we realize in this Sagittarius energy, or what we learn from Sagittarius, is that the true magic comes from the learning and the doing and not the results. So it is kind of the quintessential cliche phrase of the joy in the journey. That's kind of the embodiment of Sagittarius. So, and you're a Sagittarius.
I am. Yeah, all of that's I like the silver-tongued devil. I have been accused of like being like speaking like a politician, like the whole like I have an opinion, but I want to appear as if I don't have an opinion to appease everyone.
Oh, really?
It just
So
reminded
that
me
would
of
be
that.
you silver-tongued devil,
That's
you.
funny. I know, gosh.
I have a Sagittarius
You did-
moon, Venus, and Neptune.
Oh wow.
So
That's a lot.
there you go.
That's I like the whole joy in the journey reminder. As often as it is said, I think we need to hear it, because with the expansion and with all the possibility, we have to remember to just enjoy that. Like that's what we have. So that's the part that is available to us to enjoy. So I like that reminder.
Right. As much as results are validating, like you said, really all we have is the present moment. And well, yeah, right. Like I've been trying to lean into that a little bit more too, with just, I notice with reading, just learning, just the process of learning, whether it be through scholastic reading or whether it be through experience. I always find that experiential learning, I mean, I'm teaching a lot of breathwork classes. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but I'm doing the sound healings and I've been incorporating breathwork into that. And I've just discovered, having done this now for a few years, how important people leaving with an experience. Like it's one thing to go listen to a lecture, right? And you might walk away for a minute going, gosh, that was really cool. I mean, this happens to me all the time where I might hear something and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I listened to the most amazing thing. And my husband's like, tell me about it. And then I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It was, but you remember how you felt when you heard it, right? But you're like, I mean, I guess she was just kind of talking about, I don't really know, actually. Let me tell you. That there's, but when you actually experience it for yourself, then it's yours. Right. And that really is what we remember. And so I think if we look at this time of year as a time of year that is, you know, whether you have Sag in your chart or not, but we're all living collectively through this part in the chart. And that this really is the time where, you know, once we faced our demons in Scorpio and we've died the death and we are reemerging and transforming after we embrace our fears, that we understand that there's really nothing to be afraid of and that we can finally relax and enjoy life for what it is, that it's not a perfect place, but it's a perfect place for where we are right now.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you brought up the reminder that exploration and expansion can take many different forms. Like it can be through reading a book. You don't have to like move across the world to like harness this type of energy. And it's something that I've been trying to like come to terms with since we moved away to Mexico and Spain and then moved back earlier this year to Washington. There was a lot of trying to like, you know, just accept like, oh, this is where we are now. And it doesn't, you know, on some days feel as glamorous as like, oh, I get to wake up and look at the ocean and walk down to the beach and eat tacos all day, right? Like, so, but there like now is the phase of a new form of expansion. Like we're taking this time to expand our business and expand our learning in other ways. So it's like,
you're still being a nomad. It's just
right. It's easy to get hung up on one type of definition of that, and there are so many. I
love that idea that there is the geographical explorer, but then there's also the explorer in your mind and your experience and your, you know, and your within your capabilities too, right? Because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. I wanted to read a little quote here from this Astrology for Yourself workbook that I have by Douglas Block and Demetra George. And they say that Jupiter enlarges awareness through seeking a broader vision of reality, just like you were talking about, right? So we can look at exploration as one little thing, but it could also be this really wide spectrum. That a vision gained through exploring the realms of philosophy, religion, ethics, higher education, and foreign travel. Jupiter's placement in the birth chart shows how we express our high-mindedness and our ethical principles. And this is how it kind of informs Sagittarius. And then another quote here is, Jupiter can be over-optimistic and inspire false hope. And this is where, with Sagittarius, it's good to kind of temper that with a bit of realism and practicality. Like you said, sometimes, some years we're traveling the world and we're enjoying it. I think, last year I did a ton of travel and I've missed it. But like you said, a different phase. It doesn't mean that I haven't been exploring. I mean, I've still been exploring so many other things, and I've been doing it this year through books and through reading and all kinds of things like that. But that the fault of this is that too much of a good thing can be bad for you. So too much food results in obesity, too much faith produces poor judgment, too much travel leads to rootlessness, too much good fortune may lead to taking things for granted. And so the heavenly justice decrees that Jupiter is often followed by that Saturn, which is the planet of limitation, which is coming up in Capricorn. So anyway, it's an interesting take there.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly with Sagittarius is that it is adaptable, and it brings awareness that we are linked to something larger on the planet. So there is that fundamental restlessness where we need to explore and kind of embrace the totality of mankind. But it also likes to explore truth as it relates to nature and not necessarily to man's opinion. So Sagittarius is really big into natural law. So following, A plus B equals C, right?
It's interested in truth with a capital
yes,
T.
There is something linear about that. It's not all, I think this is why it comes into the teacher, the philosopher. It's willing to kind of chew at it from all angles, right? And it's not just all emotion. In the evolutionary astrology glossary, there's a little quote here that says, first of all, that Sagittarius correlates to compassion. The archetypes of Sagittarius, Jupiter, and the ninth house are big compassion signs and symbols. And we are free to align ourselves with it or ignore its very existence. That compassion itself is wisdom. Compassion in human life, at least anyway, is love applied. And compassion takes effort. And here's the quote, it equates for me to the old native saying about not judging anyone until you have walked a mile in their moccasins. It is the quality of empathy, not sympathy, but empathy. And it's the developed capacity to understand another from the inside out, what their inner reality is like, what their struggles, what their hopes, and what their errors are, and how they try when they are stuck. And then to see all of that and make no judgments, accepting where they are, pointing it out. So if they desire, there's no real personal or agenda or judgment, and they're just trying to do what's right. So compassion is is associated with this sign. It's something to consider this time of year as we move into these holidays with our families. And we've been, there's always some sort of like triggering something or other, I think, for most people during this season, whether it's financially stress, if there's financial stress or, family stress or lack of family stress, whatever that is. And to really approach this time of year with compassion for both self and for others.
I like that you shared that. And it just reminds me of this year is really the perfect time to become aware of that aspect and to practice it, because we get around people and family members we don't usually see, and we get to know them on a different level that, like, you don't, just by seeing your family members post on Instagram, like, you can find out what's really going on, and it's an opportunity to increase your intimacy with someone. But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Sure. Well, before we wrap up Sagittarius, I wanted to talk about the mythology. So the Babylonians, I got this from Wikipedia, just so people know. The Babylonians identified Sagittarius as the god Nergal. I'm always bad about pronouncing these names. I'm hoping that's right. It's a strange centaur-like creature firing an arrow from a bow. It's generally depicted with wings, with two heads, and sometimes has a scorpion stinger. So the Sumerian name Pablasag is composed of two elements, Pabal meaning elder paternal kinsman and Sag meaning chief head. So thus the name may be translated as the forefather or chief ancestor. And this figure is reminiscent of kind of the modern depictions of Sagittarius. And as an archer, Sagittarius is said to never fail in hitting the mark. And this depiction alludes to the power of prophecy, hence the claim that the seers and the prophets are born in this sign. And something to consider too, when you see the arrow, it's not just an arrow pointing out, it's an arrow pointing up. It's the warrior energy that's turned towards God and turned towards wisdom, that's turned towards oneness.
I like that. I mean, it just reminds me, I've just been reading the Bhagavad Gita, where yoga comes from. And they talk about all the different types of yogis and like the ways to approach spirituality with the fire and with the will and with the arrow, going back to the whole wands idea. It's a quite forceful and linear way to go about spirituality, right? Which it's not super surrender and feminine and watery and emotional. Right. No, right. But it has its place, like this method is a valid way and an interesting thing to explore. Like I've been thinking about how, there are some things like you just have to surrender. You can't learn it until you surrender, until you receive. But there's also something to be said about the action-oriented arrow shooting side of things. And so, both are needed in balance and in life. But that's an interesting visual.
I love it.
Yes.
So we were talking about compassion as the quality. And I was just thinking that as we wrap up 2019, which was a year of 3, last year we had Remington Donovan, who's a master numerologist and astrologer on our podcast. And he talked all about the year of 3 and being a boss and becoming a professional. And this year was really about like refining your skill as a pro. And I totally feel like that was a big part of my year. I was like, I felt like I became a writer this year, whereas before it was a hobby and now it was an actual thing. I think it's probably the same. I could say the same for you as an artist.
Yeah, that's so funny because that is very much what I feel like. I feel like that's, at least this is the first year that I've like really sold work or charged people for painting. So that's like
very exciting. And that next year, speaking of compassion, is going to be a 4. It's 2020. And that's all about love and compassion. And I'm very excited because our next episode will be Remington talking all about the year of 4, ending a decade, and 2020 and what that means for us and what we can expect, because 2020 itself is got some interesting numerology. So that will be probably our final episode of the year of 2019 will be Remington's episode next week. So we're really happy that he was willing to give us some of his time. And if you haven't had a minute to listen to our previous episode with Jolie Booth, that one was amazing. I think she is just a very bright and interesting an open person. And there's just so many layers.
Yeah, I loved listening to that one. And I can't wait to hear Remington's. That's so exciting. So we have some fun things and can't wait to share with you all what we have planned for our next season next year.
Very exciting. All right. Thanks so much for sticking with us. If you have gotten anything out of this website, out of this episode, guys, my brain, please text it to a friend, share it, give us a little line at your next Christmas party or your holiday gathering or whatever it is that you do. Sharing will really help us find other listeners who might be looking for the same material. And it means so much to us that you have taken the time to listen to our podcast and to connect with us. We would love to hear from you on Instagram. That I think is probably, we have a Facebook page too, but I would say we're the most active on Instagram. We definitely talk to everyone in the DMs. So please reach out. We'd love to get to know you. And thanks again for listening, and have a fabulous Sagittarius season.
Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit Intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.